Good morning, Gilead. I have made some promises to Connor and to some of the youth that when the student pastor preaches, that means you get out to lunch on time. So, made some promises with the people at Emerge too. So I'm going to make sure I hold up my end of the bargain, and we're going to get through this together. So today we are going to be in Exodus chapter 19, and while you're flipping there, I'd like to tell you a little bit of a story. So for those of you who know me, I played football my entire life and got the opportunity to play at college. And there's this one game we were playing. This was during COVID. It was our COVID season, so no fans were in the stands. My family was at home watching the game. And we were playing at Georgetown in Lexington. And my family's already smiling because they know what's coming up. It's second quarter. Let me preface this with my team was not very good. All right, we weren't very talented. We were lacking in the talent department. So I played quarterback. There was a snap. It was a low snap. I've been down to pick it up. About the time I get to about right here, there's about three guys about 3 feet from me, and I end up getting hit. It was a pretty bad hit, right to the face, and it knocks me out. So obviously, I'm on the ground. My family probably freaking out. I don't really remember a whole lot. But what I do remember is there was a moment of time, it felt like forever, where I could not see much at all, right? Now, I could have been looking into the sun. I'm not sure. But there was a lot of black spots. You hear the saying that you were seeing stars. There wasn't literal stars, but there was something going on, right, that was not normal. And it felt like forever, and I don't remember a whole lot from that moment, but I do remember thinking, I can't see. This is not right. Something here this is not good. And, in that moment, I learned how valuable sight is. Similar to that, I have another brother. He's sitting back there, the ginger with the glasses on. There was a time where he didn't have glasses, and he went to the doctor, and because he was having some vision problems, and he got his glasses prescribed, and he put them on, and he turned and he looked at Mom and said, "Mom, everything doesn't have feathers." So his whole life, I don't know how old he was. He was younger. Mom says he was 3. She's holding up 3 back there. So 3 years old, thought everything had feathers for 3 years, right? That's kind of sad when you think about it, but sight is something that is valuable. And I think it's something that a lot of us probably take for granted. In 2021, and fun fact, while I was rereading over this during small group, I realized 2021 was 2 years ago. I probably should have found a more recent study when I was preparing, but I forget that was so long ago. But in 2021, it was reported that 43 million people live with blindness. 43 million. Being able to see is a blessing, and it's something that we often take for granted. And while I was preparing this, I really thought about what life would be like if I couldn't see. All the things that you would almost miss out on. Now, of course, being blind is not the end of the world, and there are still, blessings that can come through that. However, it is something that we take for granted. So, like I said, we are going to be in Exodus 19, and a little recap, because I know we haven't been in Exodus. So to catch you up to speed, what's happened up to this point, God has already delivered the Israelites out of the hands of the Egyptians. He has sent, the plagues, the 10 plagues on Egypt. They've crossed the Red Sea. Manna has fallen from the sky for the Israelites to eat. They've seen the smoke and the fire, right, that was leading them throughout the wilderness. All this has already taken place. And that brings us to Exodus 19. So if you go with me, we're going to read verses 1 through 6. It says, "On the third new moon, after the people of Israel had gone out of the land of Egypt, on that day they came into the wilderness of Sinai. They set out from Rephidim and came into the wilderness of Sinai, and they encamped in the wilderness. There Israel encamped before the mountain, while Moses went up to God. The Lord called to him out of the mountain, saying, 'Thus you shall say to the house of Jacob, and tell the people of Israel, you yourselves have seen what I did to the Egyptians, how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now therefore, if you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant, you shall be my treasured possession among all peoples, for all the earth is mine. and you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words that you shall speak to the people of Israel. So, in these verses, we're seeing the calling that God is giving to the Israelites. It has been about 3 months since the Israelites left Egypt. It says the third new moon, that's about 3 months. And the Israelites at this point had experienced all kinds of ways firsthand that God has delivered them, and just like God says here, bore them on eagle's wings. So this promise that God is making to the Israelites, it's quite honestly, it's a beautiful promise, and it's a beautiful image of God's grace. He's not only rescued them from slavery from Egypt, but he is saying that they will be his treasured possession among all people. All they have to do is obey his command. Now, for me, it seems like a no-brainer for the Israelites, right? It's a easy negotiation on there. And I know we have a church-wide fantasy football league, right? And I know quite a few people in here participate. Maybe you're in your own league. But this offer that God is offering the Israelites here is like when somebody sends you a really bad trade on fantasy football and you hurry up and go and accept it before they can take it back, right? Because you know you're clearly winning that end of the bargain. That's what I imagine it's like for the Israelites here, right? This is an easy no-brainer for them. Yeah, we will absolutely obey your command to be, your treasured possession among all people. And so we're going to pick back up in verse 7 through 15. It says, So Moses came and called the elders of the people and set before them all these words that the Lord had commanded him. All the people answered together and said, All that the Lord has spoken, we will do. And Moses reported the words of the people to the Lord. And the Lord said to Moses, Behold, I am coming to you in a thick cloud, that the people may hear when I speak with you, and may also believe you forever. When Moses told these words of the people to the Lord said to Moses, Go to the people and consecrate them today and tomorrow, and let them wash their garments and be ready for the third day. For on the third day the Lord will come down on Mount Sinai in the sight of all people. And you shall set limits for the people all around, saying, Take care not to go up into the mountain or touch the edge of it. Whoever touches the mountain shall be put to death. No hand shall touch him, but he shall be stoned or shot, whether beast or man, he shall not live. When the trumpet sounds a long blast, they shall come up to the mountain. So Moses went down from the mountain to the people and consecrated the people, and they washed their garments. And he said to the people, Be ready for the third day. Do not go near a woman. So this was quite a big passage here, but we can see that the Israelites are all in, right? In verse 8, they tell us that all the Lord has spoken, we will do, right? At this point, like I said, they have witnessed and they had seen how God had provided. And this sight has produced faith. Their sight of what God has done, their firsthand experience of how God has provided is producing faith. These people were enslaved and then they were rescued, then led through the wilderness with no certainty of food, no certainty of shelter, no certainty of where they were going, right? Other than the fact that God said he would provide. That's the only thing that they had. Now, here's what I imagine that would be like, and I would say this stage of life for them was rather difficult, required a lot. I could imagine there were probably a lot of tears, a lot of stress, tension was probably high, right? If they respond the way that we do to most situations, right? We can imagine this stuff was there, right? This was not comfortable for them, right? A lot of them, may have preferred Egypt. Right? Slavery may not have been as bad as what, they thought what they were in was. So what can we take from this is that sometimes in our life, God allows us to be in situations that may seem difficult so that we can learn what it really means to rely on him. God may allow you to be in a situation that you're in right now because he's growing you that so you can be ready for what's to come next, because maybe your faith isn't where it needs to be. Or maybe you're not disciplined in the ways that you should be. Or maybe, God needs to reveal some sin in your life or something that that he needs you to know so that whatever he has in store next, you're ready for. Because faith isn't truly tested when everything's easy. Faith is tested when we're in the thick of it, right? It's not when we're comfortable. So I spent about 8 months in the Air Force, and I know that a lot of you, we've had some conversations about it. It's not really something we've talked a whole lot about, but that's when my faith was tested. And I can tell you, it was not because I was comfortable. It's not because everything was dandy and roses all the time, right? It was not. It was very much the opposite. And it's just like true love. I know a lot of us in here are married. Right? True love isn't revealed in the honeymoon stage, right? In the first, 6-ish months or however long they say that lasts. For some, it may have only been 2 weeks. For some of you, it may have been 4 years. However your relationship progressed, right? True love isn't really revealed in the honeymoon stage. While the honeymoon stage is great, it doesn't last very long. True love is revealed in the tough times of marriage, where arguments can be frequent, stress is high, right? Every little thing us guys probably, I would guess, tend to do is wrong, right? That's when true love is revealed. When every day you wake up and you and your spouse still choose each other and you choose to love one another the way that God has commanded, and you choose to take care of them and to look after them and to do the dishes when she's at work because that'll make her happy, even though you don't want to, right? That's when true love is revealed. It's not when it's easy and comfortable like the honeymoon stage. And that's the same thing when it comes to our faith in God. Your true love for God is not revealed when you're comfortable. Your true faith is tested, it is strengthened when you were going through it. These Israelites have been through it. And now here they are at Mount Sinai, and God is revealing how much he loves them and how much he wants them to be his chosen people. Here in these verses, we also, a little later, see the holiness of God. There's a lot of talk here about consecrating themselves, not touching the mountain, right? Staying away from, do not go near a woman is what they were commanded. Stay away from certain type of relations, right? This is when we're seeing the holiness of God. God commands these people to consecrate themselves. They need to wash their garments when the trumpet sounds, and then they will know that God is coming. We're seeing the holiness of God in front of us. This may seem kind of silly, all these rules, right? But this is the way it is. God is holy. We are not. We can't stand in the presence of God unholy. These are things that they had to do to be able to present themselves and be in the presence of God. Jumping back into Scripture, verses 16 through 20. It says, on the morning of the third day, there were thunders and lightning and a thick cloud on the mountain and a very loud trumpet blast, so that all the people in the camp trembled. Then Moses brought the people out of the camp to meet God, and they took their stand at the foot of the mountain. Now, Mount Sinai was wrapped in smoke because the Lord had descended on it in fire. The smoke of it went up like the smoke of a kiln, and the whole mountain trembled greatly. And as the sound of the trumpet grew louder and louder, Moses spoke, and God answered him in thunder. The Lord came down on Mount Sinai to the top of the mountain, and the Lord called Moses to the top of the mountain, and Moses went up. So kind of a comic book string of events here, right? Something that, we read about, and we really can't even imagine. Whatever you're imagining, I'm sure, is not to the proper magnitude of what it really was. Here, Scripture reveals the way that God made his presence known to the Israelites on that day. And so not only was the mountain itself trembling, but it also says the people were trembling. Right? They were kind of scared. I mean, reading what we read here, it's easy to imagine why that was scary. Right? This would have been terrifying to see and to witness, quite frankly. The Israelites on this day saw a glimpse of the magnitude of God. They just saw a small little sliver of it. They saw just a little bit into what God is capable of doing, and just that alone was terrifying for them. I think sometimes we as a church and we as a community of believers, right, we lose a sense of God's size, of the magnitude of who God really is. We sometimes like to reduce God down to a mid-sized deity that we can explain and control because that makes us feel comfortable, right? But that is not God. God is infinite. when we reduce him to this size, to a size that we can explain, and explain him as such, we are limiting God to ourselves, but also to the people around us. There, famous man in history named Albert Einstein. He would often visit churches. He was not particularly religious. He definitely wasn't a Christian. And there's a man who worked very close with him, and when they asked him about it, it's because that the Christian church would oftentimes bring God down to a size that Albert Einstein didn't think was possible because of his studies of science in the world. He's like, man, if this is the God that they're saying created all this, that can't be right, because he's not big enough. Right? And we do that a lot. We bring God down into this box, but that's not him. We're not giving God the respect and the worship that he truly deserves, because he's the one who created the universe with a single breath. Planets form at the sound of his voice. Stars come in and out of existence with a single word. And we can't and we shouldn't limit God. And these Israelites, they may have had an image of what God was in their brain. But then once Exodus 16 came, and that morning when the thunder and that trumpet was sounded, man, their expectations and who they thought God was, I'm sure, was shifted greatly. Man, they were thinking, we may have underestimated this guy, right? He may not be all that we thought. He may be more than what we thought he was. And see, if we have an accurate perspective on who God is and his size, then this will produce what the church calls a fear of God, right? A fear of God. And now this isn't this fear, right? We talk about this every now and then, right? It's not some irrational phobia, right, that will keep you in the house eating sunscreen like Howie from Benchwarmers, right? That's not what it is. It's not, you're not scared to go outside in the sun and go pick up the Girl Scout cookies at the front gate because the sun's evil, right? That's not a fear of God. If you haven't seen Benchwarmers, then you have no clue what I'm talking about, and you think that's just random. I'm not advocating in the pulpit for you to go home and watch Benchwarmers, by the way. I just know a lot of you have probably seen that, right? So this fear is not that type of fear, right? This fear is out of reverence and it is out of respect. It's different. An irrational fear where, you're afraid of whatever, afraid of heights, whatever it is. Maybe some of you think that's a very rational fear. I probably wouldn't disagree. But this fear is different. An appropriate fear of God should produce worship, not isolation. If we're afraid of God, we should not be afraid to come to him in prayer. We should not be afraid to worship him. We should not be afraid to seek out his will for us because we don't know what he's going to do, or we don't know what he's capable of doing, right? This fear, when it's an appropriate place and when you truly know God and have that true fear of him, it's going to produce worship, and it's going to produce you getting on your hands and knees and saying, God, whatever it is you want with my life, God, I pray you use me to do that. Just like we sang just a minute ago, right? We are nothing but a vessel for God. When you truly give your life to Jesus Christ, that's what it is. You should go to him day in, day out. God, use me today. Use me in my life, in my marriage, at my work, whatever it is. We need to be willing to follow God and do what he commands, because this is an act of worship and obedience that will stem when we have a proper fear of God. Jumping back into Scripture to wrap up this chapter, verses 21 through 25. It says, "And the Lord said to Moses, go down and warn the people, lest they break through to the Lord to look, and many of them perish. Also let the priests who come near to the Lord consecrate themselves, lest the Lord break out against them. And Moses said to the Lord, the people cannot come up to Mount Sinai, for you yourself warned us, saying, set limits around the mountain and consecrate it. And the Lord said to him, go down and come, bringing up Aaron with you. But do not let the priests and the people break through to come up to the Lord, lest he break out against them. So Moses went down to the people and told them." So God gives Moses more commands for the Israelites, and the reason that this is happening is because this is setting the stage for what is to happen next. And I'm sure most of you you can see the heading for chapter 20, right? What is coming next in the next chapter is when Moses will receive the 10 Commandments. So these rules and all the things that God is saying to Moses kind of setting the stage there. But reflecting on chapter 19, man, just think about to see what it is that the Israelites saw. Maybe not just here in chapter 19, but when they were wandering through the desert or through the wilderness, when God used Moses to part the Red Sea, they walked across on dry land to see what the Israelites saw. Their sight produced faith. Their sight also produced fear. This fear produced worship. To be in the physical presence of the Lord and to see him descend the way he did with smoke and fire, what that would do now. In an age of social media, and I know a lot of us think that that's of the devil, and a lot of times, it may be, but in a world of social media, if somebody were to experience this and that were to upload, now it may or may not make its way across all platforms. However, a lot of people would see that. To see that and to think of what that would produce, what that would do to the Christian church, what that would do in our schools, in our workplace, what that would do in our household, what that would do in your personal life. Right? To see Jesus, or to see God's presence truly the way that the Israelites did, what that would do. So I titled today, as you can tell by the title up on the screen, the title of today's sermon is Faith by Sight. And I know a lot of times we often talk about faith in a different manner. Faith by sight is not something that we really think about. Oftentimes we talk about, faith in spite of sight. We can't physically see the body of Jesus, and, we can't physically see his face right in front of us. But his presence is all around us. None of us today will probably see what the Israelites saw at Mount Sinai. Now, I'm not saying God can't do that again. However, I don't think God's going to set the Appalachian Mountains ablaze and we're going to be there to see that, right? Probably not going to happen. He could, probably not. But to say that we don't see God around us in his presence, this would also be a lie. For a lot of us, see God when we see a sunset, right? Oh man, you see it when you follow a bunch of youth on Instagram and have them, added everywhere, then yeah, you see a bunch of pictures of sunsets, right? And God's beauty, right? And a lot of us see it that way. For some of us, it's when you hike for hours and hours and you walk uphill for hours, and it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but you finally get to the top and you see a clearing, right, of a bunch of trees that you could really just look up a picture of instead of walking uphill for hours. Right, but you do that, and you get to the top, and you're like, man, God's beauty, right? We see that. Y'all see that. I don't hike, clearly, right? You reach that opening, you look out, and you see God's creation, and maybe it's there you feel connected to God. And for some of us, maybe it's when you held your newborn baby, right? In that moment, you see you feel God's presence. You see the beauty of his creation. Right? For me, it's when I sit home on the recliner and I turn on a Saturday football game, right? That's when I see God's creation and the beauty, right? God, thank you for creating this game, right? That's not theologically sound, by the way. Don't write that down in your notes. Right, but for some of us, that's when it is. We see God's beauty and we see his creation everywhere we turn. It's evident in the fall when the leaves are changing color. That's another time I see it, right? When the leaves change and they're falling, right? That's when we see God's beauty. But there's a lot of people out there, right? People who aren't saved, who don't see God's beauty in those things. Right? They don't see that. They don't know God. Why would they see the beauty in the creation? So then that leaves the question, where are they going to see God? How are they going to see God? Those who don't believe, they need to see God in you and in me, in the church, in the way we love each other, in the things that we do, in not just the words we say, but the actions that we have. This is where they will see God. And these are the people who it's the most important that they see the presence of the Lord. Right? The people who don't know him, they are the ones that need to see the presence of God more than anybody else. So, brothers and sisters, it is our job for them to see the presence of God. If we live with God as the head of all things and his presence known to those around us, then that is where these people will see. And then it'll start to click. Right? They'll see the way you act and the way you say. They'll come to church. Then maybe one day they'll accept Jesus, and then guess what? They'll see the beauty of God in the sunsets or when you go hiking. Right? That's how that works. That's kind of the circle that we're in. It is mine and your responsibility, and it's a great responsibility. It's not one easy. It's not one we should take lightly. However, it should be the reason that we wake up every day. That should be the goal of every day. How am I going to show Jesus Christ to those around me today? In what ways am I going to make his name known? Because the same power, the same God that the Israelites saw here in Exodus 19, that descended upon Mount Sinai, that shook the whole mountain, it's the same power that lives inside of you and me. We have to live with that truth being evident in our lives and in our actions. The same God that the Israelites saw is the same God that we see when we look out and see a sunset. It's the same God. It's the same power. And just like he provided for the Israelites, he's going to provide ways for you and for me. And when you seek opportunities to make his name known, he's going to reveal those to you. But it's in that moment when we have to be bold and courageous and we have to take a step out. We have to be vulnerable maybe for a little bit. It's in that moment where our true responsibility kicks in. So maybe there's some of you today who don't know Jesus, who haven't accepted him. There's no better day than today because God has loved you so much that he sent his son to die for you and for me so that we may know him. By raising on the third day, he defeated death, he defeated sin. We were able to walk in a relationship with him. So, with that being said, we're going to move to a time of invitation. The altar's going to be open. If you want to come up and you want to pray, there's people here who will be willing to talk with you. With that being said, let's go to the Lord in prayer. Dear God, thank you for today. Lord, thank you, God, just for the opportunity to come into your presence, God, and to worship you, to worship in a community of believers, God. Lord, I thank you for the story that is Exodus 19, God, of you making yourself known to the Israelites, God, and that the example that they set, Lord, and being willing to follow you, Lord, though that we know that they make mistakes, God, but you're always there, Lord, to remind them that you love them, God, just like you do with us, God. Lord, I pray that if there's anyone here today that doesn't know you, God, that you would make yourself known to them, God, that they would come to know you today. Lord, just be with us and guide us. It's in your son's name I pray.